What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court today, being December 7th. I, of course, am Sean Murphy, joined alongside the man with the hustle, the man with the muscle, the man bringing that Marquette heat, Troy Certain. Troy, how you doing, my guy?
Pretty good, Sean, other than the Pistons lost tonight. But how are you doing?
You know, I'm doing well. I was doing really good. And then I saw that the Pistons blew an entire game lead to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the final seconds.
I believe I'm trying to think, 16-point lead or 23. For some reason, both those numbers are in my head.
Well, I know it was up to that point at one point. I can't tell you what the peak lead was, but we were up by 20 points at one point at least,
correct.
Or if not 16.
There we go.
Yeah, if not 16. So, listen. Those kinds of losses are going to happen at the end of the day. It's a young team.
Yeah.
But being 4-19 right now, especially when the Houston Rockets, who was a team that we were comparing ourselves to, just went on a 6-game win streak. Not great. But what has been great is the play of Cade Cunningham.
Absolutely.
Because every single time he heads out on the court, it only gets better. So, that's absolutely been unreal. I mean, over the past 2 weeks, I feel like he's just been showing people why he's the best player in this class. I mean, he went 28 points, 11-24 from the field, 6-11, 3, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals. And yeah, he's just absolutely solid. So
he was the right pick. And I think too, I saw a stat that right now, I mean, we're only 23 games into the season, but right now he has, I think, is it 4 triple doubles on the year? I believe 4. And that is the third most out of a rookie in NBA or Pistons history. Third most rookie in Pistons history, which means he very well could beat Joe Dumars number 1 with, I think he had 6 or 7 triple doubles in his rookie season. So the fact that he's more than halfway there, 23 games in, he's going to break a Pistons record for most triple doubles in a Piston history.
Yeah, that'd be an awesome statistic if it was true, because he only has 1 triple double. So
oh, are you serious?
Yes, dead serious. You're way wrong.
Oh, I was wrong. But anyways, hey, do the math. 1/5 somewhere. He's close to Joe Dumars. He can beat Joe Dumars' record. It's possible, Sean. It's possible.
From Half Court, where each and every week Troy and I sit down and we talk all things NBA basketball. If you like that, be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to this channel, as this is a great place for NBA content. Be sure also to follow myself on Twitter at Sean Halfcourt and Troy on Twitter at TroySergi44, where you can get your incorrect Piston statistics. Anyway, I'm totally kidding, Troy. You know I love you. But anyway, yeah, there is a lot to discuss. So first of all, kind of the biggest story over the past week, I would say, was the Phoenix Suns Golden State Warriors pair of matchups that we had the opportunity to watch last week. And they ended up splitting the series, and the Phoenix Suns are able to come out and dominate on their home court, and the Warriors did the exact same. Granted, no Devin Booker in that second matchup. However, both teams showing why they were the top 2 teams in the Western Conference right now. Troy, from watching those matchups, what did you think? Do you think that was the Western Conference Finals preview? And what do you think about those teams in particular? What stood out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think this is going to be a Western Conference Finals preview. And what impressed me that first game was DeAndre Ayton's performance. Just a beast among the glass, around the paint. And Cam Johnson was hitting some shots too. I think that was something that, he was definitely a role player in this last year's finals run. And I think, with him being a young guy, I think he has potential to, I'm not saying make or break, but be an influence, a positive influence on that team. So first game, that was definitely the thing that caught my eye was especially Aiden's performance. The second game, obviously Steph, that doesn't need to be said, but Andrew Wiggins impressed me too. I think he's coming his own too. He hit a couple nice mid-range. He was really aggressive around the hole. And I think Gary Payton II too. I mean, oh my goodness, that guy's a stud. And I think he's a guy that, we're going to be talking about, for years on end too. I think he's a guy that has sky's the limit for potential. And I think if he plays like he did, this past, I guess you could call it 2-game series, then I think he's going to be a great addition to the Warriors team.
Yeah. I mean, I think, listen, I think to your point, just the Warriors system that they have and the development that they've done to get to where they're at now, is nothing short of remarkable, but also, to your point, just a lot of guys that are playing really good basketball right now, right? On both sides. I think what stands out is the depth, but also both of their abilities to defend, two of the best defensive teams that we have in the game, but also two of the smartest teams that we have. I mean, like, it's always a battle whenever you see Chris Paul go up against any great point guard, especially, I think Steph Curry is one of those guys where it's like, listen, you have Chris Paul, who plays that way more traditional point guard role, and then you have Steph Curry, who doesn't, right? Let's put it that way. So I think they're stylistically, it's really fascinating, but also I think they give each other a really difficult time. I mean, the Warriors are number 1 in defensive rating. The Suns are 2nd in defensive rating. So those are two of the best defensive teams that we have in the league, right?
That says a lot.
Yeah. I think what the Warriors, if they were to play in a 7-game series, what would really be difficult for the Warriors in particular is going to be Ayton down low, right?
Absolutely.
I think, I mean, listen, Steph Curry's going to get his. And at the end of the day, as long as he gets his, that's really all that matters for that team, because if Steph Curry's on, watch out. But if you're looking at matchups and you're looking at a 7-game series, it's hard to not look at the length of the Phoenix Suns and the lack of length on the Golden State Warriors side. And even though the Warriors are a small ball team, this isn't that same league anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I think length nowadays, we look at guys that are super versatile and that can do a lot of things, that can stretch the floor. And so I think small ball, because of that, I think that's just becoming positionless basketball. Right. So I'm really interested to see what the Warriors can do to combat that, and like how big of an issue that is. Granted, they have Wiseman coming back later this year, but listen, let's not kid ourselves. Okay. James Wiseman, let's be nice. Really good player, drafted 2nd overall. It's probably gonna have a great career in Golden State. All that stuff, right? Let's get all that good stuff out of the way. He ain't no DeAndre Ayton right now.
Correct. There's not even, you can't even compare the two.
Which, by the way, people that are criticizing DeAndre Ayton going number 1 overall to the Phoenix Suns a couple years ago, like, oh, you guys are stupid. You should have got Luka, you idiots. Hey, if I'm Phoenix, I'm feeling pretty good right now, because
and that's something that people forget about the draft too. I mean, we talked about this back in, we did our Mount Rushmore of draft busts and stuff, and we were talking about how some people still today call Hakeem Olajuwon a bust because he went number 1 and Michael Jordan went 3. But that's just not, you can't make that argument, Sean. We're talking about Hall of Famers. I'm not saying,
well, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day,
ballot, but
yeah, and yeah, it's like, at the end of the day, to your point, it's just like, listen, like, these guys, if you just look at them, it's pretty obvious that it makes
the Suns better.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it's like they play completely different games, but also DeAndre Ayton, if any other team had the number 1 overall pick, he would probably not have been the number 1 overall pick. But for Phoenix, a team that already had some scoring guards, a guy like Devin Booker to build around, just to name a guy, they clearly needed someone that could anchor them defensively. And at the end of the day, as much as you want to say that big men don't lead to winning in this league, I think that's kind of false. So, granted, a lot more veteran minimum guys starting at center winning championships now than back in the day. But, DeAndre Ayton, certainly really important to what they're doing in Phoenix. But also there is the return of Klay Thompson that's going to play a role in this series, I think.
Big time.
And the next time that these two teams play, I believe we will see Klay Thompson on the court. So that's going to be super exciting, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. I don't think after those two games, I don't think there's like a definitive judgment as to like which team looks better. I don't know about you, Troy, but I have dead even right now. I think they are the clear cut two best teams in the league, and I think it's them and then everybody else.
Yeah, I do too. And I think what's going to make that series go one way or the other is going to be the little things, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
rebounding, turnovers, made or missed free throws, right? It's not going to be who goes for 40 this night. It's going to be who executes better,
right?
Offensively and defensively.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And not only that, but Troy, we were also able to see this past week, we also saw a matchup of two of the best teams in the Eastern Conference as well. We saw the Chicago Bulls play against the Brooklyn Nets, and one of the players on the Chicago Bulls, Demar Derozan, has been going off this season, and the Bulls were able to beat Brooklyn at Brooklyn on Saturday.
Yeah.
Troy, we've been talking about this Bulls team and how interesting they are for a little bit. They're 16-8. They're not slowing down. What has stood out to you?
Yeah.
The Chicago Bulls.
I think two things in particular, not saying that these are the top two things, but just two things that really come to my mind is obviously the playing of DeMar DeRozan.
Oh my gosh.
I was just telling you earlier that now he doesn't lead the NBA in points per game, but he does lead the NBA in points. And that says a lot. Looking at how many snipers we have in this league, guys like Steph Curry, Giannis, Kevin Durant, right? Those guys that we talk about that are at the face of the league. DeMar DeRozan's beating them as far as putting the ball in the hoop. And I think that says a lot to the Chicago's team. And I think that's a huge reason why they're winning these games. And the second thing, don't laugh, but the defensive play of Alex Caruso. I am serious, Sean. He is impacting that team like crazy on the defensive end. And I think when looking at, this team back this summer with our report card of their new signings and stuff, it was like, can they gel? Can they work? How will they spread the ball? But when you're playing at such a performance like DeMar DeRozan is playing, really being that catalyst to that team, and not just him, but Zach LaVine as well. You're gonna be 16-8 the way that they're able to play together. And I think we see that coming together. And I see a potential playoff run. I'm not saying a finals run, but I'm saying that this team could go deeper than we think in the playoffs this year.
Oh, this could be an Eastern Conference Finals team, no doubt. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, listen, you got DeMar DeRozan at 4th in the league in points per game. You got Zach LaVine in 7th in points.
That's a lot. I didn't realize he was that high.
Yeah. So you have 2 of the top 10 guys in the league in scoring on your team. Not only that, but also you have guys like Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso to anchor you defensively, and to lead the charge on that end. But then on top of that, you have you have Vucevic, who just came back into the system, who's a solid big man. I mean, this team was a middle of the pack to not good defensive team last year, and they've been consistently a top 10 or a top 5, top 6 defensive team this year. I mean, listen, man, if they can keep doing that, I mean, the sky's the absolute limit. You know what I'm saying? And I think it was such a foregone conclusion that this would be a second round team in the East this year. And if we've seen anything, it's that the Eastern Conference, although it's probably as tight as it's ever been, it is fascinating because I think the East overall is better than the West. I still believe that after what we've seen this year, but it is by no means a standout team yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, if there is, it's Brooklyn, right? But I mean, Brooklyn by no means has looked like the consensus number 1 team in that conference. Correct. So right now if the season were to end today, the Nets would be the first seed, followed by Bulls at 2, Bucks at 3, Heat at 4, Wizards at 5. Troy, if you were to pick today, what is your Eastern Conference Finals matchup? Who do you got coming out of the Eastern Conference Finals?
Yeah, I love Chicago so much. I'm not counting them out at all, but I'm going to still have to go with Milwaukee and Brooklyn. Just because Giannis proved way too much last year to me in the playoffs and his finals run. And
Right.
I think that core works together well still. I think Drew Holiday is playing great.
Yeah.
I don't see major red flags, if really any at all, with Milwaukee right now. So I just can't pick Chicago over them yet. And obviously you can't never count out Kevin Durant,
No, you
especially with the
cannot.
chip on his shoulder from last year. And James Harden is coming back to his own as well. And I think that team, is they're improving. They're improving a lot from, last year's a little bit struggles with themselves and kind of their inner struggle, if you will. And I do have Brooklyn coming out of the East.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I definitely can't blame you on that. Now, listen, James Harden, he's definitely been coming back into his own, but at the same time, he's just been having nights where he's not that guy, and it's pretty apparent. Like the nights that he pops off and plays great. Like for example, like one night in November, he went off and he had 36 points. You know what I mean? And then another night he had 12. And like, granted, that's just the league. That's just how it's going to happen. Right. But, James Harden is currently averaging 20 points a game. His shooting percentage. So not only is his points per game down by 5 points over his career average, but on top of that, he's averaging, he's shooting worse. So his scoring is lower and his efficiency is lower too. Right. And at a certain point, you got to stop saying, oh, well, he's got to get in shape. Oh, well, it's just the beginning of the season. Cause we're in it now. You know what I mean? We're 23, 24 games in. We're about a quarter of the way.
Yeah. Which is a lot if you think about it.
Yeah. So there's not a ton of time to get it together, so to speak. I mean, granted, there's 3 quarters of the season to go, right? But not a lot. So, if I'm looking at that, that's definitely a pause for concern. So if I were to pick today who I had to go to the NBA finals, I'd probably still say Brooklyn too. However, if I were to pick solely today off of what we've seen so far, I'd go to the Milwaukee Bucks. So, but having said that, still a whole lot of basketball to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think matchups too, something that we've seen throughout the years, really, matchups play a lot too in the playoffs, as far as the early rounds is what I'm talking about. Yeah. Because, we think of a team, I'm thinking of the most obvious one that I remember in the past decade was back in 2014 with Grizzlies and Thunder. Remember that in the West when the Grizzlies upset the Thunder, and like that was just a sheer matchup problem, right? Oklahoma City that year wasn't able to. And I think of, in recent years, even when Milwaukee beat Boston in 2019 in the second round, right? I mean, Boston was heavily a favored team. So really, this time of the year matters more than we give it credit to, as far as winning games and making sure that we're the highest seed possible, and that home court advantage as well, because matchups matter. And I think when we see upsets in the NBA, it's different than March Madness, right? Yeah. When we see upsets in the NBA, it's because of matchups that were in place because of teams that, didn't have the higher seed that they were expected to, because they lost a couple of games based off laziness towards the end of the year or this and that. And I think of teams like Cleveland back in 2017, 18, when they were the 4th seed, and everyone knew when the playoffs started that they'd be in the finals, right? Yeah. Which is hilarious, because a 4th seed and they're your guaranteed ticket, and they were the guaranteed ticket out of the East that year. Right. So matchups play a lot, but yeah, sometimes you can manipulate them, but a lot of times you can't. And I think when we look at this time of the year, matchups are going to be so big, and winning those regular season matchups and securing the playoff seed that you want is going to matter. So I think that needs to be said too, because I think a lot of casual NBA fans forget that part. Yeah, 100%. Those are a lot of the games that are happening now. They might not seem like a lot, but to your point, a lot of these games that we're seeing, like bad stretches in the beginning of the season,
bad stretches in the middle of the season. A bad stretch at any point could be the reason why you slide in the playoffs, right? There are certain games that can define your season and that can just define where you're at as a team. Speaking of games that have been defining, this past week, Troy, we also saw the worst loss in the history of the NBA.
Yes, we did.
Granted, this team just beat us, but we don't got to talk about it because the Oklahoma City Thunder played. Okay, it seems like an insult to say that they played basketball, but some would say that the Oklahoma City Thunder did something that was close to playing basketball on December 2nd against the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, important to note, Memphis was without their star, Ja Morant, as he is working his way back from a sprained knee, but also the Oklahoma City Thunder were without their star, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And so when looking at this game, it was not something that I thought I would remember in my life. Yet here we are, because Troy, the Memphis Grizzlies defeated the Oklahoma City Thunder 152 to 79. 152 to 79. Now, those without a calculator, which, by the way, remember Troy back in the day and like all these teachers were like, you're never going to have a calculator in your pocket. Checkmate. Anyway, yeah, we do. What you taught me doesn't matter. But the Memphis Grizzlies won by 73 points, which is the largest margin of victory in the history of the NBA. Troy, first of all, I'm not going to ask you if you watch this game because I
watch the highlights.
You watch the highlights of this? What are the highlights of this game? My gosh.
The highlights of this game consisted of the Memphis Grizzlies playing bully ball down the post with Xavier Tillman and Jaren Jackson Jr. and those guys, those former Spartans that I like, and kicking it out to the three here and there, and Oklahoma City just like missing every shot they took. That's kind of the summary that I can give to that game. But what's really impressive to me was how much bully ball the Grizzlies were playing, of just beating the ball on the post and putting in an easy layup. Like that was a really big part of the game. Like it wasn't like Memphis was just hot on the three ball and they were just like making all these threes. It was a lot of post layups.
So I'm looking at plus minuses right now, Troy.
Yeah.
For both of these teams. Now, I'm going to read the lowest plus minus for each team. Are you ready? The lowest plus minus for the Memphis Grizzlies was Brandon Clark. He finished the game at plus 14, which is the lowest on the Memphis Grizzlies. And then on the Oklahoma City Thunder, the lowest plus minus was power forward Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who was one of the starters that night. Troy, Jeremiah went minus 56. Minus 56.
If you were to ask me, I'd be like, maybe minus like 18, 19. No,
the entire starting lineup. Let's just go down the starting lineup. Minus 44, minus 47, minus 53, minus 56, and minus 32. And then you go down to Memphis and it goes and it gets even worse. Cause I mean, you just go down to the Memphis Grizzlies. You got plus 39, plus 42, plus 42, plus 6 feet, plus 16, plus 15. That is just bizarre. Oh my goodness.
It really is like nothing we've seen in recent years, Sean.
Which I mean, listen, at the end of the day, this is a truly unprecedented loss. Oklahoma City They're the second lowest record in the Western Conference. It wasn't a secret what their plans were this year, that they were going to tank. But hey, I mean, credit to them because their next game out was at Detroit and they were not happy and they did win. So good bounce back. But Troy, what do you do as a fan when this happens? You know what I mean? Like imagine, I mean, when the Pistons lose by like 20 or 30, it doesn't feel that great, right?
Yeah.
But the worst loss in the history of the sport.
Yeah. It's a really good question, Sean. And I guess I really don't know. Maybe take a break from the team, I guess. Like it's kind of the only thing that comes to my mind. I don't know. Like, what do you say? Like, you can't just watch every game for the rest of the year.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you just got to forget that one happened. You know what I mean? You just got to pretend. You just have to pretend that game didn't exist, right? I mean,
bring it up in a podcast 20 years later, but that'll be the last time or the first time that you talk about it.
Oh, I'm going to level with you, Troy. I think we're all going to forget this game happened. I think the only time we're going to remember is when we go 5 years ago today, the Memphis Grizzlies defeated the Oklahoma City Thunder to cause the worst loss in NBA hit. It's going to be something on Twitter.
Not only that too, Sean, but that was the most points the Grizzlies have ever scored in franchise history, 152. So 2 NBA records, one for the team and one for the league.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, listen, if you're the coach of that team, I mean, you just gotta, especially first year coach.
Yep.
That's
younger guy.
That is a heck of a thing to lead a team through. Yeah. So, best of luck. I mean, my apologies, second year head coach. Okay. Nonetheless, doesn't really change anything to me there. You know what I mean? Billy Donovan's pretty happy that he's in that beautiful Chicago weather compared to Oklahoma City. Feeling pretty nice right now. One other thing I did want to highlight is Kemba Walker. Now, we talked a little bit about Kemba Walker this past week, but today Kemba Walker finally spoke out on being out of the rotation. And he said, I have no choice. I have no choice but to live with it. And he said this, and I quote, "It was tough, obviously, because as a competitor, I love to play basketball. I love to be on the court. This is the first time this has happened to me in my career, but pretty much on any level. But at the end of the day, I have respect for Coach Tibbs and the decision he made. It might not be an easy one, but it was a choice he made. I have no choice but to live with it." And he said, it's a tough decision. And, he said, I could be pissed. I could be upset. But at the end of the day, there's some young guys here who look up to me. I'm pretty sure they wanted to see how I reacted to the situation. Anybody on my team down the line can be in the same situation. Maybe I could be a role model in that aspect. And it was tough, but at the end of the day, it's not just about me. I'm a team guy first. So those words stood out to me, Troy. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just seeing Kemba react as well as he has, especially for a guy who 2 years ago was starting in the All-Star game, right? Mm-hmm. So, Troy, what hits your head when you hear that? And what do you think of Kemba Walker's future, not only in New York, but do you think he has any shot of getting a starting point guard job in the NBA anytime moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it first and foremost shows that he's a leader. He's a team player. He's a seasoned vet. I think that really shows a lot of his character too, of, a guy being around for a while too. And a guy that really has had a lot of success in the league already, and especially not even in the league, but in college too. He had an amazing, absolutely amazing March Madness run. his senior year, or maybe not senior year, but his last year in UConn that won the national championship. And that was one of the most impressive, I guess, leadership performances I've ever seen, at least in my 23 years on this earth. And I think he's a guy that really cemented himself, in the Charlotte's organization, and had a nice little stint, I guess you could call it, in Boston. But I think
he had a stint there. He was in Boston. We do know that much.
He existed there.
He was there.
I think, he's a guy that I think his time definitely has an expiration date. As far as starting point guard, no, but serviceable vet for a team, a team. Absolutely. I think he still has that in him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think every single guy in the game of basketball reaches a point to when they have to be told you're not that guy anymore. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, some guys reach that earlier than others. Some guys reach that because of health. Some guys reach that because of age, right? Mm-hmm. Kemba certainly not because of age. He's 31 years old, Mm-hmm. But certainly with some of the injuries that he's had to endure, he's clearly not that guy anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And another guy in that position is Blake Griffin of the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
This one I don't think we really touched on much last week, but Troy, I can't help but feel like this is Blake Griffin's last year in the NBA.
Ooh.
I don't know what your thoughts are on that. But
I think that's but I would push it another one. I would say next year's the last year in the NBA for him.
I don't know, man. I mean, to be 32, even Brooklyn doesn't want you in the rotation, and they're going for cheap guys to win a championship, right? Mm-hmm. What if he doesn't play in Brooklyn, where, I mean, the only other place would be LA, right? I mean, the Lakers or possibly a Clippers reunion, maybe. I mean, what's the incentive for a guy like Blake to keep going after getting out of the rotation? You know what I'm saying? Especially for a guy, because I mean, Blake, Kemba, I think Kemba has a shot to bring it back. I think his game lends to getting some minutes in some form. I'm going to be honest, Blake's washed. Like, I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean that if you watch him on a basketball court, it's not even a question of what can he do, but like, what can he do? You know what I mean? And I don't mean that like, he was shooting under 20% from the three, shooting 16% from three. If you're a power forward, if you're trying to stretch the floor, being a big of any kind on that team, that's not going to fly. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, I mean, the guy, like he wasn't really contributing other than rebounding. And like, they have guys who can rebound. That's not an issue. So I just watching how he played. I mean, he, especially just how abrupt this ending was. I don't think this is his last chance. I mean, maybe he can prove me wrong. And like later in the year, he can he can use this time to get into shape, get healthier, get his legs under him a little bit more. But like, at the end of the day, nothing to see this year that's been inspiring to say that's going to happen.
And I guess where my head went when I said, right, maybe another year, and you said, where else would he go? I mean, he could go ring chasing. I mean, ring chasing is probably the obvious, probably realistic.
I mean, it's the only option for a guy like him at this point, right? I mean, he could get minutes on a tanking team.
Well, I wasn't going tanking team. I was going to a team like Miami or Dallas.
How's that not ring chasing?
Because let's be honest, they're not your LA, they're not your Phoenix, they're not your Golden State, they're not your Brooklyn, they're not teams that are like, they're not your Milwaukee that are like, we're in the mix for it. They're good teams. They're going to be in the playoffs.
I think Miami would very much argue they're in the mix.
Maybe. I don't have them probably going to the Eastern Conference Finals though. I don't have them going to the Eastern Conference Finals.
I mean, I don't have them going to the Eastern Conference Finals either, but they're certainly in that mix.
Okay, sure. But even if you bring a guy like Blake Griffin with hopes of, I guess, ring chasing, maybe that is a realistic one. I see a Miami or a Dallas more than a LA or Brooklyn, like the teams that you were saying. That's all I'm saying.
No, that's totally fair. And I could see that, but again, it just comes down to the fact that especially just seeing how sharp the decline has been. I mean, listen, Blake is super young, really well off financially, incredibly successful, really good looking, has a career in Hollywood or wherever he wants it to be going forward. So I am
His stand-up comedy is funny, by the way, like actually funny.
Yeah, no, he has actual stand-up experience. Like he's worked with, writers and like, he's made stand-up like very much a realistic career path for him. So I think that's definitely something in the cards for Blake. But for right now, I would say that his stand-up is currently better than his basketball skills. So we have reached that point with Blake, unfortunately. And that's just where he's got to be. And now, Troy, it is time, as usual, to head to our weekly segment that ends the show. We like to call it From Mount Rushmore. Now, even though we don't go to Mount Rushmore each and every week, Troy, this is the time where you steer the ship and take us home. So with that, Troy, what are we doing today?
We are going to the great land of Turkey. Just kidding, Detroit. And we are talking about 2004 NBA champion Mehmet Okur. Sean, what do you know about Mehmet Okur? You said earlier before we started the podcast, you feel like this segment is just trolling you. And I'm not denying that. But I'm also not agreeing with that because this is a segment that I feel like you and I can definitely laugh together and cry together at the same time with, because of how ridiculous some of these names are, but also how some of them were kind of impressive and a little bit underrated.
It's a pretty nostalgic name.
Yeah.
The man, the myth, the Mehmet. I mean, listen, he played about 10 years in the league.
Yeah.
Started out in Detroit, and after he won a championship with us, he left.
Yeah, pretty much. Went to Utah. Actually played some really good minutes in Utah. Was probably better in Utah than Detroit.
And honestly, I remember him more for his days in Utah than I do it for his days in Detroit, just because of the fact that, I mean, he went and played 7 seasons in Utah, and
versus 3 in Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah. So he, in Detroit, I remember, and even then, like, he was our backup big, but like, I think Earl Campbell probably got more minutes than he
Alvin
did.
Campbell.
Yeah. Alvin Campbell. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I remember Mehmet and Darko just looking absurd on that bench just because of how unathletic they were to the rest of the team. Yeah. But also, I mean, hey, he was a serviceable backup big that won a championship with us. You know what I'm saying? So I remember him. I remember him for that, and I remember him for his sick hair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because especially in Utah, oh baby, that man had like, kind of like where it kind of like goes up like that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing. Oh, he looked sick, Troy.
Yeah. And he's a guy that I think, as far as, his time in Utah, I know we're supposed to be talking about his time in Detroit, but his time in Utah, he was a guy that really stretched the floor, I think, for them too, with a young Darren Williams too, and AK-47. And I think he was a guy that was able to do that. And I think when he was in Detroit, I think his job was more so kind of put back some garbage points, but also rebounding the ball. I think he did a really good job of that, coming off the bench and being a spark in that catalyst. And I think that's something that, he definitely molded that tough Detroit kind of mentality. You know, he wasn't a sissy, right? I mean, he never backed down to the opponents, and he always stood firm. And when Big Ben needed a breather on the bench, and Mehmet Okur came in. And he was a guy too that I think was a little bit underrated scorer too. I mean, he really could score the ball here and there. Again, this is a little bit before my time as far as watching, you know, consistently, but from the highlights I remember watching, and definitely, you know, I don't know if he really got a lot of playoff minutes. I think he got a little bit, especially in that Milwaukee series. I think that first round when we won the finals, he played a little bit. So yeah, he's a guy that, you know, understood his role and played it well.
And also,
that's something. Go ahead.
Fun fact: the only Turkish player to ever be an NBA champion.
Wow! Still to this day.
Still to this day.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. But also, apparently at this point is currently looking to be, and his goal is to be a coach. So whether it be in a Euro club or be in the NBA, looks like his goal is to be a head coach. So looks like at one point he was on the Suns staff. I'm not sure. I just see this article that 5 days ago from Yeni Safak, which is it's not a swear word, I think. Oh yeah, this is a Turkish this is a Turkish news site. And so you know, I trust the fact that Mehmet Okur was on it. But yeah, apparently you can also read it in Turkish, and I regret clicking on that button. But anywho, yeah, so he he was on the Phoenix Suns staff at one point. I'm not sure if he still is, but nonetheless, super cool that he you know, that he's going after that. You know what I mean? I mean, that's I can tell you more about his coaching career. I can tell you his time in Detroit, because I just remember playing as him in 2K and being like, wow, it's a little limiting, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Memo was his nickname, I believe, which is kind of funny because now we got a thing called voice memos. So kind of actual word is now branched off of his nickname. Kind of
we
funny.
We should call him Voice Mehmets in honor of his first name. We should now change the word memos to Mehmets, and I think that is how we honor Mehmet Okur. Oh my gosh.
And each and every week you will join us from half court. I think it's time, Sean. We're going to end on that note. I have nothing more to say about Memo.
Oh my gosh. These episodes are getting shorter, but they're also getting weird. I like the short episode formula, by the way. And I hope you at home do as well. You know, just allows us to sit down for a little bit and talk hoops. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to do it from half court. Troy, thank you for that segment, and thank you to those at home who watched. Be sure to follow Troy on Twitter for more takes like this at TroySergey44, but you can also follow me on Twitter as well at Sean Halfcourt. The link is in the description down below. Of course, be sure to share with your friends, leave us a positive review, and thank you to the 15 of you who listen to From Half Court more on Spotify than any other podcast this past year. We want to thank you so much for listening. We want to thank you so much for watching, and we are excited for our second full year of From Half Court coming up, and we will catch you next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.